Reverse hyper is a really good tool to train the spine. All right, so stay with me. Like when you think about like tool utilization, like it's a really good tool. So let me kind of like what is a tool? Well, when you
Hmm.
think about it, that's kind of like what a special exercise is,
Hmm.
right? That's what specialty equipment is. Specialty equipment is a tool. I'll post the video, but I don't know if I ever told you this. When Louie had Dynamic Fitness Systems building out his specialty equipment,
Hmm.
I did a YouTube video with him on
Okay.
going through like the specialty equipment.
Okay.
Okay. And in the very beginning of the video, Louis says this, and I mean, it's like a truism. He's like, this is special equipment. He says about how like you wouldn't know about him if it wasn't for the reverse hyper. And he's kind of here because of the reverse hyper. And then he goes on to like specialty equipment, change your gym, change your life.
Okay.
Okay. When you think about it, it's true.
Okay.
Right? Like
Yeah.
specialty equipment is like specific, like, and if you understand the origins of how they originated, it's like think about like the original specialty equipment, like all kind of revolved around like the Soviet Union for Olympic weightlifting. Like those were the special exercises of like, hey, we'll do a front squat for some Olympic lift, and where they would break down components of the lift. In powerlifting, it's easier for people to see because you got a box squat and then a squat. So you can see that like a tool as a box squat is a really good way for the programmer to be able to essentially like program for absolute strength, speed strength, strength endurance, whatever it is that you want.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So when you start to think about the reverse hyper as a setting, it's very unique in regards to training the spine. But with that being said, there are gaps in the programming of the reverse hyper. Okay. So if you look at historically, and we obviously have a reverse hyper project that is essentially almost done,
Hmm.
right? But we'll kind of walk through the gap that we see in programming for the reverse hyper. I think once we identify it, a lot of people will also say, like, hey, yeah, this is a huge gap. Okay, so if you look at how Louis programmed it from his writings, he essentially so we'll think about the reverse hyper but prior to the pendulum.
Okay.
Okay, because the reverse hyper didn't start off as a pendulum.
Fill us in on that.
Okay, so essentially what happens is, and it depends on like which article you read on Louis, but
Hmm.
essentially like in the 70s he broke his back. He's essentially on crutches for like 10 weeks, according to some things that he wrote, right? And then, hey, went to see a doctor. Doctor said, hey, you're going to have to get a fusion. That's the options we have. And then he ended up not going that route. He ended up, which makes sense because at the time, he's working as a crane operator, right? But he also has a gym, right? And he's a power lifter and he's a powerlifting coach. So he's like, I'll just train my way out of this, right? Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Like there was an article that he wrote in a chiropractic magazine on the reverse hyper
Oh, really?
called, yeah, it's called Mother is the Necessity of Invention, right? Meaning that like he was desperate because his
Okay.
back was in such bad shape that he had to
I didn't
figure out
know
a
that.
way. Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I
Yeah.
didn't
Mike
know.
France.
I knew about the injury. I didn't know about the article in a chiropractic magazine.
Yeah, Mike Francois, who's a bodybuilder locally here, he's in there too, and they're discussing like he's kind of in the photo op with them.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So if you look at the programming for like how Louis programmed the reverse hyper, right? Like essentially what ends up happening, let me get back to the pendulum.
Sure.
So essentially what he did was any type of closed chain movement would irritate his back. So what closed chain obviously means is like his feet is in the plate, he's doing like 45-degree back extensions, that would irritate his back. Like glute
Hmm.
ham where you put your feet up against a pad, like
Hmm.
that's closed chain,
Hmm.
right? And so essentially what he ended up doing is he built a platform within the squat racks, and then he had, I think he's told this story. So like obviously go to him to listen to the story, right? But just for the point of the conversation is it was just a platform in there. And then he
Okay.
would lay on the platform, and it was high enough so that his legs would essentially be hanging. so that it was an open chain movement, meaning his legs weren't touching the ground.
Yeah.
Right. And Jim Seitzer, who trained with them prior to that, like that's of Bandbell, that's who was telling me this to a degree as well. Right.
Okay.
But anyway, so that open chain setting essentially allowed for, spinal decompression, right? Because now you're getting this
Yeah.
traction,
Yeah.
right? But if you actually read his work, right, he actually started by just rotating his tailbone up and down.
So
So
no
he,
pendulum at this point. He's just lifting his legs.
no pendulum at this point. Well, he's not even lifting his legs. He's just doing like what he calls like sacral drive motion.
So
So
he's
this
he's segmenting his lower lumbar spine.
correct. And he keeps like when he's writing these articles, it's like sacral drive. He's right because essentially like think about what he's going to do. He's going to do repeated efforts to near failure in
Mm-hmm.
this setting, right? And so what does that feel like, right? Like he's at neurological point B because at this time he's like an elite level powerlifter,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Like he hurt himself good in a good morning,
Okay.
we doing at the bottom of a good morning. He said he just lost focus, and that's when he first hurt his back.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay. And so you can see neurological, biological asymmetry. We have that article coming out discussing Louie's injury is I think it's next month. But anyway, so so essentially the first part of that is like you said it, right? Maybe you can talk to this un like it was like serendipity to a degree, right? Like you don't need to know what you're doing until retrospectively it works, right? So think about it. He's just figuring out how to like get segmental flexion and extension within his spine.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting part is if you think about it, because he's on a flat platform like this, like so the platform's flat. So like if his spine is on there, it won't buckle. It's like there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And then
Mm-hmm.
he can just worry about using his tailbone to essentially segmentally move his spine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then at some point in time, right, we have a progression that we take people through. We kind of go through a different progression than Louis. But then at some point, like you can start to swing your legs, right? And as you start to swing your legs, a little bit of the hip extension starts to drive a little bit more, right? But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, like segmental flexion and extension. So that's like the joint function component of a point B spine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what ended
Mm-hmm.
up happening, this is why I truly think the pendulum exists to a large degree.